Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us. This is the Ask the Expert session for team management. If this format is new to you, I will go through the agenda. So we will start with what to expect in this session. We will introduce the team of experts that are here to answer your questions. And then we will move to the most exciting part of raising questions and answering them. So what to expect in those coming 30 minutes? Please use the chat box to ask questions. You can either post them anonymously or use your name. The question will appear to all once approved. If you see a question that is also relevant to you, upvote it as your favorite using the thumbs up. We will mark it as an important topic and we will address that. The expert will answer verbally and we will do our best to answer the most popular questions. So let's talk a little bit about ethics. This session is recorded. I will also ask you not to record the session, please. And to help us, please don't spam the chat. Also, please adhere to our Microsoft code of contact here in the next slide. You have it also in the link. So let's move to introducing the expert. My name is Ronit Ben-Shefer, and I'm the product marketing for the team management related capabilities. So today I'm moderating this session and now handing over to all of our experts here to introduce themselves. Jamie, to you.
Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. Great to have you here with us. My name is Jamie Stark. I'm a program manager in the Microsoft Teams engineering organization, and I have the pleasure of looking after the Teams Admin Center for the purposes of this conversation. And so, as Ronit said, we're using the live event Q&A. We don't have any pre-canned questions here. These are exclusively coming from you. And we have a huge cadre of colleagues who have joined us also on this call, who are able to answer questions in the background on the chat. And then for some of the more interesting questions, we're going to be just taking them live here. Apologies for the sound issue early on. Now it looks like we're good to go. So yeah, let's go ahead and get rolling. Oh, excellent! I didn't see we had an extra slide. Oh, so as I said, we have a huge cast of folks who've joined us here, both from the engineering organization and from our special sales organizations, who look after different areas of the world and different parts of our business, exclusively still, of course, focused on Teams. And so yeah, I think that there's already a bunch of great questions in here. Oh, actually, I just saw one that popped up here from Dan. Dan was asking if we're going to see a quote-unquote read-only admin role for the Teams Admin Center. Fantastic question, Dan. One of the things that first, it's important to understand the way that Teams Admin Center operates. There's a variety of ways that you can control access to products, right? Like we could go and have our own kind of mechanism for having users assigned to the product. And instead, what we do is we use Azure Active Directory admin roles, and there's 4 of them that are designed for Teams: Teams Service Admin, Teams Communications Admin, and 2 others that deal with support. Of course, we also support a legacy Skype for Business admin role as well, in case you're transitioning over from Skype for Business. You don't have to go and kind of retool your administrative work. There's also an Azure Active Directory admin role called Global Admin that gives you access to everything. And so every tenant has 1 global admin. Of course, you shouldn't have more than 5 for security purposes. And that gets you the ability to do anything within the tenant. Now, there's a corollary role, there's a similar role that is like global admin, but is only for reads, and it's called, shockingly enough, global reader. And so with global reader, you can go anywhere within the service, but you can't do anything other than looking at the content, other than looking at the data. And global reader is supported in Teams Admin Center, but a lot of the interfaces that Teams Admin Center has to different pieces of infrastructure in the Teams ecosystem, in all the different services that we have that come together to operate Teams, not all of those have been upgraded and have the support for global reader today. So if you log into Teams Admin Center as global admin, you'll see some set of capabilities. And then if you log into Teams as global reader, you'll see a subset of that. And that's intentional. Over time, we're always turning on new capabilities for global reader. And we think it's a great feature, right? Because it's the feature that you can, as an IT pro, you can give to your boss, and you can say, hey, you know how you always ask me to do reports when I'm super busy? Well, here's a way that you could go and look at the reports when I'm super busy, and you don't have to bother me, and that's kind of cool, right? So we're big fans of global reader. We're going to continue to have that capability be added in with Teams Admin Center, and have all of those features be turned on. Cool, Ronit. Any more questions here while I take a long drink of coffee?
So I would like to have a question. There is a question around device management. One moment. Let's have another question. Can the invitation email when someone gets invited into a team be customized?
Okay, I heard of the invitation part. Can you say that one again?
Yeah, sorry, it's jumping here.
Can an invitation email when someone gets invited into a team be customized? Right. Is that the one that you were reading? Excellent. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Sorry, I was just pausing to think through the workflow there. Not in Teams Admin Center. That's not a set of capability that we offer today. And I'm struggling to think of a place where that would instead be supported. So I don't believe that is supported today elsewhere down the pipeline. I could certainly imagine two different ways that we could do this within Teams Admin Center. One is similar to the way that we customize the way that we customize meeting invites. This is a set of capability that traces its history back to Skype for Business and the way that we customize meeting invites in the Outlook plugin for Skype for Business. We do the same with Teams as well. And that is configured on a per tenant basis. And so what that means is you can set that up, but you can't necessarily customize that for different groups of users, different cohorts of users within your organization, nor can you say like, oh, just this one person has a special kind of looking invite versus otherwise. And for most customers that works out okay. But we've definitely gotten feedback from customers that say like, we prefer to have this be a little more granular. And so I'm curious if there's feedback. Continue to use the Q&A, and then we can go back and mine this later as we start to look into this feature. It'd be interesting to know whether it would be important for that customization for team invites to be on a per team basis, or to be on a per tenant basis. Like if it's one thing that you want to have the tenant be that tenant email be customized, just to say like, hey, this is coming from Fabricam. it's using our branding, it's using our logo, so you can have greater assurance that it's not it's not a phishing expedition or that's not an illegitimate email, things like that. Or if it's important for it to be at the granularity of the team, meaning for some teams, I'm going to have one type of treatment for these invites, and for another team, I'm going to have a different type of treatment for those invites. So that is something that we would want to know. One, it increases the complexity for IT pros, but if that granularity is needed, then that's okay, right? We generally don't want to randomly increase granularity for IT pros, randomly increase complexity for IT pros. It's still 3 in the morning here. If that's not appropriate, right? So that's how I'm thinking about it. So I'd love to get more feedback. And I just want to add on, there are a variety of areas that we are looking at theming within teams broadly. So customizing the way that the App Store looks, and customizing the way that meetings operate, and customize the way that that they look. And so there's already a bunch of effort and a bunch of thinking that's happening around tuning the team's experience and the team's UI specifically for the needs of your organization. And so this is already an area that I think broadly around the org we're looking into, and this fits right into that. So great question.
So I have another question around is it possible to restrict custom apps or third-party app to a specific team or group using policies?
So the question, is it possible to have a specific app, first party or third party, be associated to a team or a group via policy? That's not the model that we've taken with policy management for apps. Policy management for apps is really a layer that manages the way that the user's expression of apps looks, and then the way that the users have the ability to get additional apps into their environment. And so those are controlled by 2 complementary policies: app setup policy and app permission policy. But there's still policies that are fundamentally applied to user objects. Now, you've seen Renee and I talk about policy and some of the enhancements that we've made there. 1 being bulk policy assignment, 2 being policy assignment to groups. Policy assignment to groups isn't rolled out yet for app permission policy and app setup policy, but that is work that we're doing. That doesn't mean though that the group object that you would apply that policy to, if that's what's backing a team, then that team would have the expression of those apps. Really, the group is the container for users, and then the users would be assigned to that policy. So if we're thinking about a policy framework for groups and teams assignment, it starts to get interesting, because we don't have a model here of teams consuming policy, the team object consuming policy. Users consume policy, and in some cases, for things like dynamic emergency calling, you'll have network objects consuming policy. We don't have that today with a team object. The team objects are settings, and so when we think about like managing apps for a team, we think about it in the way of like curating or configuring the set of apps that are available in the team, and that is definitely work that we have in the backlog to be able to add into Teams Admin Center within the managed teams infrastructure, to be able to take a team, in addition to configuring its membership and its channels and some of its settings, to also be able to configure the apps that are associated with that. Today, we're not thinking about that as from a policy perspective, but if that would be useful, meaning having a policy object that I could apply across teams that has a consistent set of apps that would be expressed for that team, it's just a kind of a shortcut and a way to be able to reduce the complexity there. Then that definitely give us that feedback. That would be super interesting to hear from. So thank you for the question. That was awesome.
So I have a very popular question here from David, who is asking that is it possible to enroll into a previews of new features areas such as template?
Oh yeah. Boy, you would think this would be a really simple question. So I think generally yes. What is ooh, I gotta mention, that's exciting. One of the interesting things about our previews is that they're really designed for us to gain feedback about the product and to gain feedback for us to then tune the way that we think about the that we think about the feature and we think about the service. And so there are plenty of customers that I have worked with that are interested in getting preview because they need the feature and they really want to exercise it, and may not have the opportunity to give us the feedback that we need in order to help the feature make its way into general availability. And that's not a great fit. It is a great fit though when you both need the feature, you're actively using it, and you're able to give us lots of fantastic feedback. I wish I had a link to that was handy that I could just throw out there to get onto the queue or to get onto the preview program. If one of my colleagues has that handy, don't hesitate to throw that out there. I don't off the top of my head, but certainly you can always reach out. You can always reach out to me. You can always reach out to your Microsoft account team, and we can we can see what we can do in terms of getting folks into preview. It's not an unlimited quantity. While we're very fortunate to have a big preview organization and a lot of great engineers who work with customers, that isn't an unlimited capacity. There is a limit to the amount of hours that our preview engineers can stay awake and help customers and continue to have appropriate cognition. So we though love the feedback, and it is super important for us to get. And so as long as we just try to strive for that balance. I do have a question here from Linus that showed up in our little private chat here. Is there any way to provision Teams phones automatically via MAC address so they're always auto logged in? We've definitely heard a bunch of great feedback on device management. For those of you that are familiar with our kind of journey from Link and Skype for Business into Teams, I hope that the device management facility that's available within Teams is perceived as significantly improved from what we've had in some of the previous generations of the product. I would like to say that I fondly remember delivering device updates via SharePoint, but I can't say that's true. So yeah, we think that we've gone a good chunk of the way down the line with respect to having a more synchronous type of connectivity between Teams Admin Center and our devices plant for being able to do things like going down from upon high, touching a device, telling it to update, telling it to reboot, things like that. The provisioning is definitely one that we're in active design and development on right now. And the goal is to be able to support a zero-touch provisioning that is not performed by an IT pro, but that is performed by a technician. And so the scenario that we think about is company is building out a new office. You've hired a team to physically be in that location, but the core kind of IT organization is not physically at that location, and they're able to support the technicians who are on site, not by giving them the AAD creds for the account, but instead by giving them a one-time password. And so the intent here would be the IT pro generates a one-time password, delivers it to the technician. The technician uses that one-time password to bootstrap the device, and then once the device is bootstrapped, then it's in the manageability kind of life cycle with device management. That is that's the direction that we're heading, and we think that is both. We think that's the right balance between there's additional complexity there, but at the same time, we're really protecting the kind of key assets of the organization with respect to your AAD creds and making sure that those are handled the right way, and that the one-time password it can be created in bulk. You can do it for multiple devices, and it lives long enough that the technician can get in and kind of do their job. So that's the balancing act that we're kind of playing on this, but this is definitely an area that we're in active development and investigation. So
another question that is coming across the reports area, and I think it's a very important one and popular. Is there a way to connect Power BI to Microsoft 365 Admin Center usage data, the daily data, and Team Admin Center PSTN usage data per record?
We're again actively looking at this. We've been looking at Power BI and Power BI connectors for quite a while. I don't know exactly where the status of the reporting work is, though. That is managed by a set of colleagues that unfortunately are not on this call. If anyone on the thread or if anyone in the meeting has any info on where the Power BI work is, don't hesitate to put that in the chat thread. We've gone back and forth on this, to be frank. Like Power BI, we know that Power BI makes a ton of sense for practitioners and folks that are going to be taking this data and merging with other pieces and kind of using it going forward. At the same time, Power BI does have a high lift in terms of complexity and getting it all set up and making sure it all is working appropriately. And we know that lots of customers just want to be able to have the data, right? So we're looking to service both cases, both making sure that the usage reporting and the analytics that are present within Teams Admin Center are the right ones. The feedback that we've heard loud and clear is more meeting reporting and more meeting analytics, please, and that is absolutely work that's ongoing. On the other hand, we've definitely heard the Power BI the Power BI feedback, and we've been incrementally rolling out more and more Power BI connectors into the reporting backends, and that won't stop.
I can just add to that there is a planning of introducing early next year the meeting and calling dashboard, which also will include a predefined web report through the dashboard within the Team Admin Center, and will connect all those capabilities together, coming from the based on the CQD data, together with the predefined reports we have today around callings and meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Ronit. That's spot on. I've had the opportunity to see some of the early code here, and it's really nice. Clearly, you can imagine it's a pretty significant data event to be able to show kind of all the meetings that are happening within your tenant. And the other piece that I really appreciate is that we've really integrated it into the kind of core call analytics framework pretty well. So it's very natural to kind of move from viewing the meetings dashboard into viewing the call analytics work. I do see a funny one from my colleague Stephen Prakash here. Somebody apparently commented on the T-shirt. It is still dark here in the West Coast, so I do admit, though, I had my phone flashlight and I was looking for this. We got these shirts as part of our COVID. Hey, you're working from home, but your company still loves you. Here's a T-shirt. So I don't know where these can be procured, but I'll definitely put a note into our to our design team that these were appreciated in video, and who knows, maybe when we have conferences again in person, we can have these available.
So I have another question relating to education. In the team meeting for education, it's very hot topic now. Is it planned to give the option to let only the presenters, not only the organizer, to bypass the lobby?
Is it the option to give the presenter and not just the organizer the option to bypass the lobby? That's a really good one. I've not heard that one come up before, but I can totally imagine the scenario where meetings, especially in an edu case, could be scheduled by a central service or a central resource, but the presenter, being the instructor, would be the one who's actually engaging in that meeting. That's feedback I personally haven't heard, but I can totally imagine from the scenario. Clearly, not a big deal for us to engineer in Teams Admin Center. We already have a very robust meeting policy. This would be this would be an additional setting with a meeting policy. The big work there would be ensuring that the client and the service are doing the right thing as a result of the meeting policy. And so there's always that kind of coordination between the different engineering organizations to ensure that the controls and the capabilities that exist in the policy framework have right application into the service and into the client. I see a note from our producer that we have 2 minutes left, and that was before I started talking. So with that, I don't want us to be cut off inappropriately, but I see there's so many great questions, and I can't wait to actually read them instead of focusing on answering these verbally. And I guess we can take one more.
So I see a very popular one on the busy on busy. Will user get the ability to control busy on busy settings? Today,
yeah,
available in the admin center.
Yeah, God, that's funny. Like busy on busy should totally be controlled by end users, and this is kind of an attitude that we've had now in policy development for a while, where we don't think about policy necessarily as on or off. We think about it more as three states, as on, off, or user controlled. Or expressing a default and then the ability for the end user to manage it. And that's a really common path that we take for settings these days, or for configuration elements within a policy. And yeah, you're right. Busy on busy doesn't follow that path. No reason why it can't. And I don't know. I guess as I feel like if folks need busy on busy support, that they would just turn it on. I can't think of a case where an end user would look to have that be on a per call basis, but that is probably a deficit of my imagination when I've only had one cup of coffee and it is now 4 a.m. on the West Coast. So apologies for that. But yeah, no reason that we couldn't. Just would be interested to hear what the scenario would be that would be supporting that. So that way we could take that back to our folks in CMD. Cool. I think we're over time, but I'll need to hear from folks who are in charge. So
we would like to thank you for all the questions. We will try to address most of them and in the chat. And thank you for joining us today. And we will be all the time hearing from you more feedback to continuously improving the management capabilities. Thank you. And thank you for all the experts that support us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.